I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to this Manoa meeting. This is a series of campus listening tours and events that President Greenwood and the trustees are engaging in. And in many ways, it is a great addition to the Manoa Fora that we have had so far as we talk about serious campus issues. This is an opportunity, and I hope you'll feel, an opportunity to share your thoughts and your concerns about the university and what kind of job we're doing in trying to serve you. We have here President M.R.C. Greenwood.
Aloha.
Our Chair of the Board of Regents, Eric Martinson. Vice Chair James Lee. Regent Chuck G. Regent John Holtzman. Regent Coralie Matayoshi. And Executive Vice President Linda Johnsrud. So with those introductions, I'd like to ask President Greenwood to come forward with some introductory thoughts.
Well, aloha.
Aloha.
I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon, and thank you all for coming and sharing some of your valuable time with us. This is going to be a conversation about the future of the university that we all love and serve. And I'd just like to get a feeling for this. How many of you are faculty? Because we have a lot of faculty. How about staff? Okay, how about community members? Okay, so we have mostly faculty and staff here. This is for the benefit of the regents as well as me.
Students.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was certainly one of those faux pas you wouldn't want to repeat. Students, how many students do we have? Okay, I'm so delighted. So this is really going to be a conversation, not any. Oh, I'm sorry. This is really going to be a conversation, not any kind of a lecture by me or anyone else here. I'm just going to say a few comments of things that I think we should all be thinking about. Now, we all know, a lot has been going on, particularly in the media, for the last 5 to 6 months. And it has been a very difficult period for the university. And you've heard a lot about some of those issues. But I think it's time to refocus us on the future and on moving forward and on what we are really accomplishing here at the University of Hawaii. We've made tremendous progress on the strategic outcomes and performance measures that are designed to help us serve the state of Hawaii better and to serve our students and by extension our faculty, staff, and employees. That's what we're really needing to be focused on. We've been able to dramatically increase our service to underrepresented groups, especially Native Hawaiians. We've gained national recognition for some of our efforts to encourage students to take more credits a semester so they can actually graduate from college in 4 years. We've made remarkable strides in transfer and reverse credit to the associate degrees. And here at Manoa, you are the major driving force for the $500 million, or a little less than that this year, in extramural funding that the university brings into the state. And that, of course, is a great testimony to the talent of the faculty, the students, and the staff that we have here at the university. It is also a hugely important factor in job generation and in stabilizing the economy of the state of Hawaii. It is a way for the university to help the state create an economy that is not so dependent on just tourism and military and a few other things. We need this sector in Hawaii for the future. This has been a big year here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. We've seen continued record high enrollment numbers. We're preparing to open the state-of-the-art cancer center. The official opening will be in mid-February. We've gained a lot of national attention with some of our initiatives. We have continuing and excellent recognition of the quality of our faculty. Our students are something we are especially proud of. The students really represent the next generation, and we hope some of them will really represent the next generation of faculty members and possibly even administrators at the University of Hawaii as we move forward. So I know you're very proud of your campus, and one of the things I want to say very clearly, particularly to the faculty and staff, but also to the students, is how much we thank you for the hard work that you have put into this wonderful institution. This has been a very difficult recession for the country, the deepest one since the Depression, and we have not been a campus or a university that has whined and pulled back and cut back on our efforts. In fact, we have put our shoulder to the wheel, if you will, and moved forward. And when we lost tens of millions of dollars from the cuts that the state had to give us as a result of the recession, we went out and raised money from other sources. For example, we were able to bring $40-some million into the state for information technology infrastructure. That served not only to make our universities, our 10 campuses, have a higher capacity than they've ever had before, but also every single public school in the state of Hawaii and every library in the state of Hawaii. So that is a real tribute to the hard work of people here at the university. We've also, a little bit less of immediate impact on your campus, but it's still something you should all be proud of. We also have won several of the CT3 grants. These are the workforce development grants. The total now is also up over $40 million in these grants, and these are to train people, particularly in the community colleges, but also a bit in the other campuses, on new jobs, green technology, new technologies, new agriculture, and a variety of other things. So while we were losing money, a collective effort of our university brought money and jobs back here to Hawaii. So we are, of course, an educational institution. Our primary existence is to teach, educate, transmit knowledge, and create leaders for the future. But we should not neglect the fact that we are also creating opportunities in the workplace, and one of the things I've said in the past I'd like to hear more from you about is we need to teach students, no longer need to teach students how to get a job. We need to be working on developing them so that they can make their own job, so they can create here in Hawaii, so they have opportunities for the future, so we have a better business climate, and so we have more jobs that the people who graduate from the university are happy to take and can advance the state with. So I'm not going to say any more today. We'd like to open the floor, so to speak, and hear what's on your mind. We're all here to listen, and we can respond to some of the questions if you have them. And, but mostly, we want to know what you would like to see for the future, what your concerns are, and anything else you'd like to share with us. So thank you very much.
And we do have folks carrying microphones here if you have any questions, but we'll open up the floor. We got one here.
Don't be shy. We really would like to hear from you. Yeah. Yes, it's on, I think. No, maybe not. I'm sorry, we're not hearing it. I think you're gonna, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I graduated from this institution. In fact, I've been here all my life. When my mom brought me home from Kapiolani Hospital, she brought me home to the UH campus. My father was faculty back then. I worked in the DOE, and I wonder about education K-12. In the origin of public education, pre-college, is in religious indoctrination in the theocracies of British North America. If education at all levels is not an employment program for dues-paying members of the public sector unions, why cannot any student take, at any time, take an exam for credit, say, I know this stuff. Why does he have to spend 4 years and thousands of dollars if he could just walk in, take an exam, and get a degree?
As a matter of fact, I believe that our policies at the University of Hawaii do allow students to test out of courses. I don't know how widely they're used. Maybe Linda knows, but you know.
I can't speak for Manoa on that. I don't know the extent to which credit by examination is used or taken advantage of, for that matter. But it's always been listed in the catalog, and I think most departments do have a mechanism for allowing it. If you're referring more to credit for prior learning, which is very popular in other states, we actually do have a system of credit for prior learning in the community colleges, and that transfers to West Oahu and Hilo. I don't believe it transfers to Manoa. But being awarded credit based on learning that you have gained in other venues is pretty well established. But I can't speak specifically for Manoa in this case. I don't know if.
You might want to say about what we're doing.
And I'm not sure I can either, but I also do want to distinguish between content mastery in terms of knowing facts and contextual thought processes and higher order thinking that comes from being involved in a classroom discussion or classroom discussions or writing papers and so on. So I don't want us ever to get to the point where we feel a college education can be duplicated by passing a bunch of exams. I think that's we are the envy of the world in our higher education system because of the higher order thinking skills that we engender and the writing skills and so on. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I don't want us to think that taking a test is equivalent to taking a class.
Yes, I'm Helena Zaleski from the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. I was very interested when you said our goals are to teach, educate, and transfer knowledge, because all of that means we're just living within the existing pond. I would have, if I disagree with you, I get cut off. No, I would have thought it would be much more important to create, innovate, and discover knowledge. And yes, some of what the students discover we already knew, but we need to go beyond what teach, educate, and transfer.
Well, that is one of the dangers of trying to keep your remarks to just a few opening comments, as we all agreed we would do, so that we could get you to talk to us. Had I been giving my talk about what I consider to be some of the, teaching how to innovate, internationalizing, all of those things are incredibly important. But, and I'm glad you brought them up, because obviously that is something I would have spent a lot more time on if I had said more than 3 minutes worth of material. But thank you for bringing it up. And what in particular would you like to see us do? Oops, I think we're going to steal your, yeah.
I think that in order to create, discover, and innovate, we need a culture that is supportive of risk-taking.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that, and I'm very happy to hear as a faculty member that you're thinking this way, because the curriculum of the university is really a creature of the faculty, as you very well know. And so we need the faculty leadership to think about how do we stimulate students to not only learn in the ways, the traditional ways that they probably do expect and understand after they've left their K-12 experience, but how do we stimulate them to think differently, or to steal Apple's thing, think different. Because that's what we need for the future. We really don't want people who think they can get a degree, get a job, and that's it. We need people to be thinking thoughtfully about what it is the future is going to bring and what they're going to have to know and what they themselves may have to do to contribute to this society. It's different than when I went to college, where really it was very much a classical education, and if you got it, you could have expectations of a pretty solid future. That has changed for our students. And any ideas that the faculty have about how we change our approach to the curriculum so that we could try some experiments, should do something different with these students, that is very much welcome, and we really need to hear it. Ask some tough questions of the regents.
Me?
Yes, you.
Hi, thank you for this forum. I'm a biochemistry major, and
Good
I
for
hear
you.
the push.
I was a biochemistry major.
I know. So you'll appreciate this. I hear the push toward graduating in 4 years. Okay. In the sciences, when you're talking about if you're pre-med and you want to maintain a 3.7 or 4.0 type of average, that's not going to happen with the genome sequenced and the amazing cellular and molecular biology scientific data that's going on now. I mean, it's just an amazing amount of information. And I love chemistry. I love organic chemistry. I love biochemistry. And that love is being lost because there's so much information you've got to get in a semester. And I look at the students, and they're just studying to pass the exams. They're losing the beauty of science. And so there needs to be another paradigm for teaching science.
Well, thank you for that. We've got a couple deans here, and maybe they'd like to make a comment about why it should be more difficult for, we have well, let me back off for a minute and say, we have a more complex mixture of students in a public university and here at Manoa than you would find, for example, at Stanford or Princeton or one of the private universities. They do get through in 4 years, and they graduate in biochemistry and all of these things. So it may be that there's some work we need to do to convince students that they can enjoy and love this and finish in 4 years. But I think that it's possible, and I see Dean Ditto right there, so can you answer that question for us?
Sure.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Bill, but.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Actually, we have a new biochemistry undergraduate BA and BS in biochemistry degree, which was just started. But we have all of our chairs now looking at how we go about teaching the science, because right now, the old school model is 120 credits, 125 credits, 3,000 credits in order to get out. But I think the whole model is changing at this point. And it's with student loan debt being at $1 trillion in this country, it's absolutely doable to teach everything you need, not just the facts. Somehow I think we substitute cramming more facts down your throat or online or whatever to critical thinking and being able to really get up to speed. So what we're doing is over the next couple of years, we're looking at how we can actually teach more effectively, teach the material you need, and give you all the tools you need to learn anything that you need from every discipline, because it's not just learning a discipline now, it's learning multiple disciplines because they all fit together. So, and we've approached this in a variety of different ways, some modularity, some electronic textbooks, a variety of different things, and more important than anything else, hands-on learning, which has to be much more engaged with the student. Hard to do in a class of 400, 500, 600 students, but we can bring it in undergraduate research, we can bring it in exploration and taking chances. So that's a bit of that risk-taking. And surprisingly, I'll end with this, is that the faculty seem very receptive to this idea at this point. And so they're engaged in this idea as well.
Thank you very much.
By the way, in terms of risk-taking, I hope your students will take biochemistry, chemistry 710, principles of magnetic resonance this spring in the evening, taught by Professor Apple. Regent Matayoshi.
I think that a lot of what can be learned as far as the knowledge and the book learning can be done online more effectively, and with real time kind of communication between the students and the professors, and people can do it at midnight, and then use the classroom more effectively to engage them in projects like science, things that are here and now and real, and problem solving and collaborating. And I think that's the exciting thing that we can do. And I think it would be cheaper too, because people would be learning kind of on their own. You can have the best professors impart, all of that. And even have games and things online. I think that we're missing the boat if we don't start thinking about that. And we can build less classrooms because you don't have to meet every day. And so I'm hoping that we'll be doing that a lot more.
Okay. There are several hands up.
That's okay. I'm going to ask. I have a couple comments.
Where's our microphone person? Oh, okay. You've got it. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I'm glad to see 5 regents here, not just our chancellor and the president. And since the president asked to ask some of the hard questions that started up, as far as governance is concerned, I think a lot of the regions are relatively new to the Board of Regents, and I didn't read all the recommendations by the Senate committee, but I knew there was going to be some problems back in the day because early on with the Board of Regents, public testimony, student, faculty, community testimony was taken at the time that the subject matter was up. And a few years ago, the Board of Regents changed its policy and said at the beginning of every meeting, everybody gets 3 minutes, that's it. And then when the subject matter came up, everybody's pretty much swept out of the room, and there's no real honest and open and fair dialogue and discussion going on the hard issues like raise of tuition, hard issues of Manoa and campus independence from the state on the system. There are hard questions out there that come up. Back in the day, it would be UARC or the further development on Mauna Kea. There used to actually be a real healthy dialogue and debate that went on that included public. And I think the current way things are operating goes towards more so it leads towards people, the appearance of impropriety, that people, public, and faculty members, whoever wants to discuss subject matters or region meetings are pretty much excluded from engaging with the Board of Regents on very important issues that impact both the campus community and the community at large. That's one of the issues of appearance of impropriety for even faculty members or whoever looking at how the Board of Regents is governing itself. That's one issue I would like to address. Another issue is we as a university have taken a lot of dings. Going out of the community, having people talk to us, knowing that we work at the university, and they're asking us, well, what are the Board of Regents and what are your administrators going to do to clean up the reputation? I'm tired of, having to take all the jokes and saying, well, we work here, we committed ourselves, I can't really talk for administration in the Board of Regents. We've got a huge image problem. I don't know what we're going to do to move, how many folks are going to work toward new legislative session. These are hard times. People are worried, damaged reputation. So this is another area. And of course, last but not least, I'd like to also talk about the increase in tuition and where we are projected on all that kind of stuff. So those are just 3 areas that maybe the board and administrators can address. Thank you.
Why don't you take the Regent's question? I'll take it.
Sure. Thank you for your questions. First of all, let me address the public testimony aspect of it. I mean, your point is well taken, but we're trying to manage the meetings in an efficient way, and we always take public testimony. You're right; it's at the beginning. We take both oral testimony that is limited to 3 minutes, but we take written testimony, and some testimony that comes into us is extensive, and that is shared with every one of the regions. We also have gotten better at utilizing our committee structures more so that some of these issues get vetted out at committee before they even come to the board. Those committee meetings are also public, and public testimony can be taken at that time as well. But your point is well taken. We'll take that under consideration. Your second question on the board was on reputation, and what are we going to do to fix our reputation? Frankly, we got to get back to work. We got to get back to making our university great, and do the things that we're supposed to do. I don't like spending time as much in media and trying to just promote the institution through words. I think we best promote our institution through success and achievement. And I think we have a lot ahead of us, and we need to get back to work. I'll see if any other regions want to chime in.
Do you want to say, if any other regions like to say anything?
Sure. You go ahead. Oh.
And then I want to say something.
Interesting comments. I've served on this board maybe going on 5 years now. I served out 2 years of a former regent who was not reconfirmed, and I'm on my own term. Let me say that the comments that are usually, testimony given to us are listened to very carefully. Sometimes the 3-minute rule, the 3 minutes rule was imposed by the previous chair, but that was because we had an interesting issue of whether or not to keep the Pacific Biosciences Research Center as a going program or to sunset it. And there were hundreds of testimony, so that if it had not been limited to 3 minutes, it would have taken 2-3 days just to have that discussion. But even prior to the board meetings, in the committee, there were also testimonies taken, much longer testimonies, including from faculty and people who had vested interest and students who had vested interest in the Pacific Biosciences Research Center. And so the regents had 2 committee meetings as well as a couple of board meetings before the issue was decided. It was a very difficult one. But I would honestly say that had it not been for the public testimony, that program probably would not exist today. It was thanks to the input we had from the academic community and from the students, and also from some of the, frankly, some of the federal agencies that thought it was a very valuable program that we had. And so we listened very carefully. It's, Chairman Martinson mentioned that we're making better use of the committee structure, and indeed that is true. I sit on one for student affairs, and this is where specific interests will come to light. For example, the veterans have problems. We are beginning to discern a wider problem in the amount of health care available to students, and community college students that are interested, well, particularly in really remote islands like Molokai, which has a center operated out of Maui College. We listen very carefully to all of these testimonies, and I would say that we gain a lot from every single meeting, and we come to a very quick conclusion on the right decision to make. The recent affair with publicity, bad press, whatnot, I will not shirk my share of taking blame. I think we're all equally culpable, but sometimes things get beyond your control. Even when you do the right things, they turn out to be the wrong things. You don't know. I mean, you can teach students how to, I've been faculty as much as I've been in administration, and I like teaching, and one of the things you try to teach is problem solving. The thing that we quick to remind students that no matter what we teach you today, it will be probably obsolete the day you get your degree. So you're going to have to learn how to learn. You're going to have to love learning. And being Chinese, I have visited the shrine of Confucius and see parents taking their kids to teach them the love of learning. It is learning how to learn that will serve you best for the rest of your life. You'll learn a few facts and whatnot. But insofar as, as this particular, the last 6 months, we've all learned from that. we are not going to make the same mistakes again. But all of you know, and I've been with this campus for like 40 years, I've seen good times, bad times, you know, not just economic, but I can still remember going back to the first president when I came, it was Tom Hamilton. And there are others that made some decisions that did not sit well and raged on the press for 3-4 months. In one case, it lasted a year. So it will not, this incident and the aftermath does not come exactly as a surprise. All I can say is that you learn from each one of these things and hope that you can handle the next one better. But I dare say that, well, you all know actions have consequences, and in this case, the consequence was one of public relations. It wasn't necessarily that the decision we made were so bad. It just turned out something that was a little bit costly. So, and there was not that much advice, I say, good news does not sell newspapers. So that's the first thing you learn. But how you handle a problem might or might not give you the answer you're looking for, or the answer that the press is looking for, or the legislature for that matter. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Perhaps I can address your question about tuition. When we think about tuition, we think about accessibility. We want to make sure that any student who is prepared for college can attend. And to do that, what we have been doing is increasing the financial aid. How much of the tuition money that we collect we give back? And the idea of that is much like what the private universities do. You set a tuition that's higher, but then you return more of that based upon need. And we've increased the amount as 1% per year now for, I believe, Reed, is it 4 years now, 3 years? We were at 18% this past year. We'll do 19 next year and 20 the year after. And just Saturday we had a retreat and are ready to propose to the board that we continue that trajectory so that what we do is we collect a certain amount, but we give that money back to those who can't afford college otherwise, so that we maintain access.
Let me just add to that, these are important questions about tuition and why we need tuition and what we do with tuition. And I'm sure we'll be having more discussions, but this is Manoa. You all are, among the smartest folks around. And so you know that without the tuition that we now get, we would not have the faculty we have today, because we can't afford to pay our faculty at the University of Hawaii at Manoa with general funds. We do not have the money to do that anymore. So we are becoming increasingly dependent for the good services of our faculty, for the support, the electric bills, that sort of thing. These are things that we have to become more dependent on outside sources. That's not a pretty picture. It's not one any of us like. It is, however, still comparatively a very good bargain, especially since we're increasing financial aid. And I think that's why we found, and Linda can say something about this if she'd like, we found in the discussions around the state, and we had how many meetings?
On tuition?
28 meetings around the state on tuition. We found that most people wanted to know what the purpose was, what we would need it for, rather than really objecting to the fact that we had tuition moving forward. I think our regents have done a brave thing, and there is some recognition around the country for this, that they've done a multiple year tuition schedule. It at least has the advantage of letting students and their families know what the tuition is going to be, as opposed to what's happened in many other states, where the tuition has been unpredictable from year to year, and it's even increased something like 23%, or 13%, or 15% in a single year. In one institution that I know of, it changed twice in a year, once in September and then again in January. So, this way we are trying to be as consistent as we can to give people a chance to plan. It also means that we have to plan within the envelope. That's what we're going to have to work with. because we don't intend, unless there's a huge emergency, we don't intend to have to revisit that. So, you know, it was a thoughtful process. It's never popular, but it was a thoughtful process. And it's very important to our ability to offer to the students and to the faculty the opportunity to build this university. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 cents worth. Tuition is of great concern to us on the Board of Regents, because one of the things that our policy guarantees is access. We want to be sure that it is affordable for the bulk of our students. And so in announcing tuition increases, we applauded the multiple year announcement so that you could plan ahead, and generally it will not affect those who are graduating seniors, so they'll be guaranteed, you know, to be paying the same price as the catalog that they entered under. I will say that having lived through some 20 different bienniums, living through some 20 bienniums of budgets, I can only remember 6 of those bienniums being favorable. The other 14 were all unfavorable. We go through good times, bad times. In a bad tourism year, when or military retrenchment, you just don't see the tax dollars coming in, and so allocation university then is held captive to other needs within the state. And it's always a difficult thing trying to balance out, you know, your budgetary needs with different sources of income, tuition being one of them. There is also a committee, this one Regent Holtzman and I sit on, which looks at the amount of student aid that's available. And we always, you know, take great care to make sure that there is enough student aid to take care of those who are, you know, who are having a difficult time and cannot afford to rely on just a second part-time job. We have a very large number of you know, students who work 1 job or 2 jobs to attend this university, especially Manoa. And so the tuition question is a good one, but we do have this strong policy which we have no intention of changing at any time. This is a state university. We need to meet our community obligations and student needs for our community.
Sir.
We have a question over here.
Thank you, Chancellor. Regents and President, I believe that in order to be a great university, we need a community behind us. And I'm a little concerned that we haven't bragged about all the accomplishments that our community colleges, as well as our mainship Manoa campus, has done over the past several years. Given that affecting funding, giving campaigns, we're hearing that they just don't know about what we do. However, they do know about our football team.
Yes.
And so that's sort of the overriding conversation every time we get out in our community and talk about the university and what we do. It's all about sports. And I think we need to change that venue, get the information out a lot faster. Don't rely on just the network to get it out, but it's really word of mouth. And I think something more visible would be in need. Regarding your response about budget, I know we're all under a financial crunch here, but we haven't used our global community well. There's a global community out there of instructors, faculty, leaders in the world that we can tap to, and then us as faculty using that knowledge and skills to go worldwide and get an audience out there that will pay a small fee, collect money, make millions of dollars, get a raise for everybody, and help our students, especially our students, both here locally and internationally, to recognize the University of Hawaii system as a global community. We're not doing that. And you know what? I don't see a future here if we don't have something in place, a mechanism where all the faculty, all the staff, all the students can utilize technology as a tool for them to continue their learning and then transform themselves into citizens of the globe. So thank you.
Thank you. Can you give me your name, please?
Ron.
Okay, because I would be interested in following up on some of those suggestions. We have been thinking about the role of international participation and the better connections. Let me just back up for a second and say one thing. The facts are that we started a new communications plan in the last spring. And we had, I'm going to quote this wrong, but I'm not too far off, about 200 stories that appeared in the media between May of various kinds, including video of important things that were happening at the university, that appeared in various ways in the media, both written, mostly the television media. 200 of those stories. And not one of those seems to have generated the same level of interest that we've had with a single other story focusing primarily on, as you said, it seems to be the interest of the population. Now, I talked to my colleagues around the country about this, and many of them also say that the thing that people in the general public care about is the athletic profile of the flagship institution. And they don't pay as much attention to the other accomplishments. And that's part of the message I was trying to deliver a few minutes ago, which is we've had our stumble, as Senator Takuto called it. Let's celebrate the successes and find better ways of communicating those, because they are terrific. I mean, I've watched this university over the last 3 years, rising in rankings, faculty members really coming together. You know, we got through this recession with an awful lot of cooperative help across the system and within the campuses that have really improved our programs. So, when people ask me what's right, I have a long, long list about what's right with the university. But there are some things that, like the percentage of international students, how we approach that, we could certainly improve. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes. Yes, we have a question down here. Where's the microphone?
Where are our microphones? We have a question up here in the second row.
Okay.
Could you?
Are you asking a question?
I'm sorry. After.
Oh, okay, please. And then we'll bring it down here to you. Is that okay? Yes, we'll bring it to you next. Okay, thank you.
Aloha, my name is Kaivi Puni-Laip. I'm a graduate student in the Education Administration program. And I'm particularly interested in the university's commitment to an indigenous university and a Hawaiian place of learning. And so, one of the ways that we know we can do this is by hiring more faculty and staff that are Native Hawaiian to help make this an environment more of a Hawaiian place of learning. And as Native Hawaiians, of course, we always want our students to end up here at the flagship campus because this is where they can get their PhDs and JDs and MDs and really change our world. So my question is, to the Board of Regents and to the President, really, how are you folks helping to secure positions for Native Hawaiians, not only here at Manoa, but because our students, most Native Hawaiian students start at the community colleges, how you're helping to secure positions at the community colleges and here at Manoa at the flagship campus for faculty members, Native Hawaiian faculty members who can become mentors for Native Hawaiian students?
Well, I'm happy to tell you that when the Board of Regents passed the Regents budget, they included a number of new positions for Native Hawaiian faculty and staff. I think there were 30 included in that budget. Now, it's not the full complement that many of the Native Hawaiian folks and groups would like us to hire, but it's a start. So that is now in front of the governor and the legislature. And we'll have to see whether they will be able to come through and fund that part of our budget, because it is very important that we're able to continue to grow in those areas. Now, some of those positions are intended primarily to go to people who have been funded on extramural funds and who've done a very good and very impressive job, and whose funds are potentially very much threatened by the fiscal cliff. So we'll have to see how that works out, but the board certainly enthusiastically endorsed that, and I guess you might want to say something, Regent Holtzman.
I'll add something just very briefly. I proposed an amendment that would have increased the number by another 30, I believe it was. It was an amendment that came at the last moment, so we did not pass it. However, there was a promise that next year, when we take a look at the budget again, those 30 positions will be under consideration. So there's absolutely a lot of support for what you just said.
Thank you. Okay. Down here, we have a question down here. Yeah. Hello.
President Greenwood, my name is Lindy Aquino, and I'm a retired professor of political science and former director of the Center for Philippine Studies. You mentioned something about internationalizing, but I think there has been a decline, as the media has noted, in the foreign student enrollment. And it's not as vibrant as it was when we were in the 60s. You know, we were almost like, you know, the grantees were like 500, 600 at a time from East West Center. But anyway, maybe we need to upgrade the infrastructure for international recruitment of students, because it needs a lot of marketing, you know, publicity, websites, immigration problems, and so on. And I go to Asia quite a bit, and I'm always embarrassed that we don't have as much visibility as the East West Center, for instance. I'm always embarrassed that I'm introduced as a professor of the East West Center. And I say, no, it's the University of Hawaii. That's one in the same, you know, kind of thing. So I think that when the foreign international programs was still in Linda's office, I believe, but it was sent down to Manoa, right? The position of the one in charge was no longer full-time. In fact, the responsibility was given to another dean as assistant vice chancellor for international something. And that's another full-time job. I mean, this dean is already, I appreciate what he has done, but to put a full-time job on top of his job as Dean of Asia Pacific is just too much, and I think we've lost some ground there in terms of the things you have to do to promote, to market, to recruit. It's a very tough job. I've dealt with a lot of foreign students, and some are discouraged. Some have gone to other universities. So I think that's one of the problems to be addressed, I think, with a better, more upgraded infrastructure. How is it that HPU can recruit from Norway? Yes. Or you know, half of their student bodies from Europe. And we practically have not done so much in Asia itself, and we're supposed to be the center of, you know, Asia Pacific region. And during the APEC, for instance, we barely had any input. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but they just the media relied on the East West Center for the inputs that were in the media. So that's just by way of comment, while, you know.
Well, I really appreciate your comments, and maybe Regent Holtzman, I think he's eager to say something about this, because this was a topic that the Board of Regents was concerned about and interested in, and they had a task force on this, which included Regent Holtzman and a couple of former regents who were interested in the international arena. And they did do a report, and we are working on some changes. But I think, you know, I'd like to hear from more of you if you think about how much emphasis you think we should be putting on this, because to do it, I don't know, I don't want to speak for the Chancellor, but he's probably going to have to reallocate to pull that off. because we're probably not getting a lot of new money. So,
I would just add, I read the article too. I'm not 100% certain about the numbers that were quoted in that article in
no, I've been told they were
Star
not right,
Advertiser.
So, yeah.
Not for the first time was I a little doubtful about numbers from the Star Advertiser. There's lots of different ways to measure our international involvement, and the number of students is one, but another one is the number of partnerships that we're engaging in and the way we're sort of reaching out to other countries. Traditionally, we've mostly been in North Asia, and now there's a new emphasis on Southeast Asia, although Ned Schultz is not nodding his head, but he should be. And so there is an effort going on the international side. I'm a former Foreign Service officer. I agree with you 1,000%. I was part of a task force and then of another group that did this report that was submitted to the administration. Unfortunately, I don't think the results so far have been as good as they should have been. I would like to see a greater focus on that, and I think there will be. At the APEC conference, we sponsored a conference under sort of paid for by APEC that focused on quality in international higher education, and it was really quite successful. And the efforts at that conference are being perpetuated. So there's a lot going on, and more than you would think. The problem, I would say, is more at the, if you don't mind, Marcy, but at the system level and sort of coordinating and bringing coherency to a lot of great projects, efforts at the grassroots level throughout the system.
Yeah. I agree with Regent Holtzman that we are beginning to become more coordinated across the system because there are certain markets for which Manoa would be the appropriate destination and other markets for which our community colleges and the 2 baccalaureate campuses would be the correct destination for the students. But I also want to say that it's been our experience of late that partnering institutions, particularly those of the highest quality, are no longer interested in just the student exchange business. They want strategic partnerships that involve research, that involve lasting relationships, and that involve joint funding. And that's a very different change than from what it was when I first started working with international programs 20 years ago, where it was mostly about they send us graduate students and we send our undergraduate students to get an experience. So this has changed a great deal. Now there are some universities, and I could give you the list, but since there are television cameras here, I won't, who have made quite a job of really recruiting huge numbers of international students. And not all of those students were really qualified to come and do it, but that is a strategy. And I think actually Chancellor Apple can say something about it because Delaware employed one of those strategies and they increased their Chinese participation dramatically. But they also had to look at it twice.
Yes. So I think President Greenwood is hitting on the real key is that we need to establish great partnerships with universities in Asia, and we're doing that. We have a number in Vietnam, a number in Shanghai, in that area, and by growing those, we can actually, you all know that we have a very high percentage of international students in our graduate programs. What we're trying to do is do the same thing in our undergraduate programs. And as President Greenwood said, I have experience in this at Delaware. We increased our international student body by 350% in 3 years. But we suffered some setbacks in that process because we used agents initially, and we ended up on the front page of the New York Times for some of the downsides of that, where students that we admitted had not written the essay that they purported to write and had not taken the exam. So we have to do it, and the strategy we adopted there then after that was to use our partnerships with universities over in Asia, where we had a very strong bond with them, and they would help us do the recruiting internationally for undergraduate students. And I think that's we've actually put some additional resources into that. And I know it won't be popular to a Manoa crowd, but we did transfer also approximately $50,000 to Linda's office to help in this effort as well.
Yeah, and let me just mention one other thing that I think might be of current interest. Out of the APEC meeting last year came a proposal to work with several Asian universities and with the Philippines, Vietnam, and Indonesia on a project that is called the Asia Pacific Disaster Reduction, Risk, and Resilience Effort. And Ford and Rockefeller just gave that project collectively $1 million, and Chevron is probably going to match that to get it started. But it's a very complex project involving not just the university, but also the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and several federal agencies, the UN, the Clinton Global Initiative, and it's going to be very, very difficult to manage. But if it is successfully done, we will have the opportunity here to become an international center of excellence in this area. And so I think opportunities like that really help us with building the permanent relationships that lead to, really collective change. And so I'm enthusiastic about those kinds of relationships too, but they take a lot of work. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if you live long enough, you see everything coming full circle. I remember not so many years ago when the Board of Regents then criticized programs that had too many foreign students and wanted to know how many in-state students are you denying. I was one of those deans that was got under attack because I had so many foreign students, but the school could attract them. And this remains true today, that you name certain professional programs. I'm looking at director for the Institute for Astronomy. Astronomy is by nature an international program. International business is by nature, Asian Pacific Studies, travel industry management. These are all, by the very nature of the program themselves, international. So it's easy to build on an international level if you're doing it by program or colleges, but it is more difficult to do on a systems basis. I travel a lot throughout Asia too, and the questions that keep coming up are ones that deal with specific program, very seldom with the university as a whole. But I firmly believe, and I posed that question to President Greenwood once when she was interviewed, I said, what do you see, the stature of the University of Hawaii as an international or as a global university? She said all great universities of the future will be global ones. And this is what we hope the University of Hawaii will be, a global university. At least our ranking in Asia and the Pacific is moving up higher. But as to your question, do we have the recognition of visibility? Sadly, the answer is no. I sit in the same committee with Regent Hosman, and we don't know. Well, we crafted a paper, and hopefully the paper would lead, would be a policy to encourage university to do more. But it is also a question of having enough resources to allocate for that purpose. And depending on which legislator you're talking to, the answer might still not be all that favorable. Take care of your own at home first. But we do know that if you want, to say that you graduate from a great university, that great university will be international in nature.
Other questions? I think we have a couple back here. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Testing?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry if these are superficial questions, but why did you choose this particular time to hold this forum? Because it's very inconvenient for students to attend. Why not maybe on a weekend or further from exam periods and final projects? Sorry, I also have two other questions. Another is financial transparency. You're speaking about how you want to have more of the tuition go towards the students' education, I was wondering if there was going to be some sort of website or something that has like a breakdown so it's obvious to students about this. And then, for instance, could that also include the other fees they have to pay for, such as the athletic fee? Because I've had a tuition waiver as a graduate teaching assistant, and the tuition waiver only covers the tuition and not the student fees. And I was wondering why can't the student fees be in the tuition itself and just enumerated as part of the benefits of the tuition? And the last question is, I know that we like to compare ourselves to other schools as a reason to do certain activities like an athletic fee, but I was wondering how much thought is into how much, as a school in Hawaii, how much that plays into the decision, because we are a very unique location and we have very different cultures than places like many places on the mainland or internationally. We actually combine so many cultures. I was just wondering how much thought is in that, the process of making decisions that involve.
Well, first of all, thank you for those questions. I can assure you a lot of thought goes into all of those things. I think I'll defer to Chancellor Apple on a couple of those questions because they're very Manoa specific, like the graduate student issues, et cetera. We are working, if you have read the advisory task group report, which if you haven't read that particular report of the number of things that have come out in the past period of time, I would recommend a serious read of that, because that was done by 4 regions and another objective group of 3 people who are financial experts. And they have given us some excellent advice on how to go forward with clarity about our fiscal procedures. And they will, I think, be giving us more advice. I came from an institution where we had a lot of information about the budget that was pretty transparent and understood on the web, and we're moving toward that. But in order to be able to do some of that, we needed to improve our fiscal system. And that process has begun and is going along pretty well, all things considered. So I'm very hopeful that the combination of the advisory task group plus some of the recommendations from the Senate committee will actually provide us with a path forward that people will understand and that will be clearer about how the university's finances are funded and how they're used. Now, on an individual campus basis, I would refer people to the chancellor and the campus process for getting the answers that are important to various constituencies on each campus. And so I'll just ask Chancellor Apple if he has a couple of, if he wants to say something about that.
And I'm not going to say we have the greatest websites, but I will tell you all the information is there. It's actually there by federal law. It's required to post all of your what's called IPEDS data, but also your cost of attendance. And when we calculate financial aid and so on, it's all based upon the total cost of attendance to the student. And that's all available, I think, in a very transparent way on our website. I unfortunately can't give you the URL off the top of my head, but if you'll stop down afterwards and give me your address, I'll make sure you have them. What's more important, of course, is that any student can get them whenever they want by making it more obvious on our website. And I think we have maybe some work we need to do there to make those things more easily accessible. But all of that information is there. We don't deserve any special kudos for having it there. It's required by federal law to have all of that information on your website, and it is.
Linda, do you want to say something?
Yeah, and I think I can maybe help on the tuition waiver not covering fees. Tuition waivers typically are just foregone income. In other words, we just don't collect that money from you. And in the case of fees, very often they can't be waived. They have to be paid by someone. And so since it's a waiver, it waives you for tuition, but the fee is still there and needing to be paid. If we had a different system, I mean, it could cover fees as well. Some campuses, actually, money changes hand, and in that case, they can make it cover the entire package if they wish to, but we've traditionally, with graduate students and any faculty exemptions that are waivers, we've only covered tuition because of that reason. It's not comforting, but that is the rationale.
Okay, another question back there. Oh, yes. Okay, well, let me tell you that there was no intent at all specifically on the time. We looked for times that were available for most campuses before the break. And this was the time that was identified for this campus. I'm not even really sure who identified it. So that's what we did. Yeah, you know? Okay.
Well, actually, we tried to put them all at about 4:30 to 5:36 on every campus, with the hope that we could also attract some members of the community. And so there was, you know, we've got so many different stakeholders that we were really trying to bring out that, and the president's right, we kind of had to pick days on which we could manage to get good representation here. So there was, believe me, there was nothing exclusionary about it, but we did try to be consistent across all 10 campuses at a time we thought was, and we had actually hoped that 4 to 5:30 would be a pretty good time, but.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you right now. Well, you know, there's hardly ever a really good time, but what I hear you saying is that it would be good to have a conversation with students that could be more broadly attended. So we will take that as a recommendation and think about a way we could do that as we move into the next semester. So if you have some ideas about times that would work well as we move through your exams and the commencements this semester, please let me know. My email is mrcgreenwood@hawaii.edu. It's easy to remember. If you can't remember it, you can certainly find it on the website. And I read all my email. I don't always respond to everyone because sometimes I just get more than it's possible to respond to. But I always do read them, and I take them into consideration, and I send them to people who are planning things. So I think the concept of having an expanded discussion with students might be a very valuable thing, at least for the president, the chancellor, and the administration. I'm not sure how many more meetings we can put our volunteer regents through, but that's a good idea. So thank you. Oh, okay. So David is saying I'm going to be back in Manoa for the usual campus visit, where there will be a time with students. And if you have ideas about when that should be scheduled, please let me know.
And actually, I was remiss a little bit at the beginning because I forgot to remind you that in 2 days, sorry it's at 3:30 in the afternoon, but remember we have our sustainability meeting in Krause Hall, room 12 at 3:30, 2 days from today. And then we will have our January forum devoted to campus security that we've been doing at noontime in Kuykendall. So
I just wanted to say that as regents, we do take to heart the opinions of our students, and we like to hear from our students because that's why we're here. You know, we're here for the students and to make sure that they get the education they deserve. And so, you know, students are always invited to regent meetings if they have an opinion to express. And I think it would be a good idea that, you know, we might schedule more of these meetings, listening sessions with the students.
I mean, we always consider the local context as well as the overall context nationally. And it is one of the reasons why our tuition is still relatively low compared with the mainland universities, and it does influence how we handle things like fees as well. But, and that's probably about all I can say right now. Aloha.
I'm Lili Kalakame Lehiva. I'm a professor at Kamakakua Kalani Center for Hawaiian Studies, and I have 3 comments I wanted to make. First of all, I want to thank you folks for coming, because I know, especially for your regents, you're not getting paid for being here. So mahalo nui loa for coming to hear what people have to say, and for your openness, and availability. Mahalo for that. One of the things I wanted to make a point about, and it's a discussion I've had with you before. As many of you know, I am the chair of the budget subcommittee of Puko'a Council, which is a system-wide council that addresses Native Hawaiian issues. And we are advisory to President Greenwood. So I come forward with 150 and ask everybody in a budget for at least 150 FTE for the 10 campuses, and this was 165 FTE this last round. And of course, we're really thankful that we've got at least 30 for the campuses coming through for Native Hawaiian hires and programs, and 12 for Napua Na'eau. So mahalo nui for that. I think given the budget constraints of the legislature, we'll be very lucky to get those positions. So we'll see what happens. However, our need is still at least minimally 150 positions across the 10 campuses. A lot of those are on here at Manoa, where we have a lot of federal grants and Hawaiians hired in federal grants that serve Native Hawaiians. As we know, the money's drying up. We've got the fiscal cliff. We've got to worry. So I would like to propose to you folks that you consider asking all of the chancellors to put aside a certain amount, a percentage of retirements. Those people, those FTE that are being retired, to be put towards our needs so that we can fulfill those needs and get on with our work. That's one thing. On the subject of international, I really strongly ask you to consider that we start to open up our campuses to Tahitians. Now, many of you know that Tahiti is under the French rule, and the Tahitians would like to have their own country back, indigenous people. The French are very not interested in educating Tahitians in college. So it's very hard for them to get a visa to come into University of Hawai'i, and I just want you to be aware of that so that maybe you can help them out, because I know a lot of Tahitians that I meet when I go down really would like to come here to study. And they're our cousins, and so I want to speak up for them. The third thing is, I'm really glad to hear that you folks are considering hiring our own graduates, whether they're Native Hawaiian or local students. Most of us who grew up in Hawaii cannot afford to go away to college. That's why we come here, in one sense. It's also a great school, in another sense. However, we often hear about this idea of intellectual incest, and that you can't hire your own. Now, I did my PhD here at Manoa, and I disagree with every one of my history professors, so there was no intellectual incest going on. But there are also certain colleges that are teaching things about Hawaii that really the knowledge should be institutionalized and should go down from one generation to the next. For instance, Izzy Abbott taught us all about different kinds of seaweeds in Hawaii. Now that she's passed on, there is no one to take her place. We should have been training someone to take Izzy Abbott's place. We could say the same thing about land issues and water issues and fish ponds, etc. That's one thing. So there's that kind of knowledge that ought to be trained local and kept local. But also, I'd like us to see how we can hire more of our own people from Hawaii here at the University of Hawai'i. And so I just thought I'd put that out there for you, and thank you for that, Mana'o. Aloha.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have a question here, I think. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, where are we? Over here? Okay.
Hi. Thank you, first of all, for having this forum. And I don't really have a question as much as maybe some feedback. I'm sure you haven't gotten much of that lately. But I'm with Public Health. I'm Kathy Russell with Public Health. So I also want to do one quick shameless plug for reemerging us as a School of Global and Community Health very soon. But one of the things that I've noticed here, I've been here about a year, and I think it runs in parallel process to some of the issues that we have with our external communications with our stakeholders and some not so excited about backing us, is the communication, our attempts to communicate seem to be very compartmentalized. I've had an enormously difficult time in feeling like I can get the information that I need internally to be successful in supporting public health. And part of it is just, we really need, funny you should mention the problems with some of the websites. It's, our electronic presence is, some of it is like the Stone Age, if there is such a thing in the internet, but you go to some websites and it's really archaic trying to get through some of the websites just to find a policy and procedures manual, something as simple as that, which should be easily accessible. But another simple example, and this is one of my pet peeves, the newsletters that I get from the external relations, I get on Friday nights. And I don't want to sit there and read through it on a Friday night. I'm actually interested in the information, but the email comes out at like usually 6 o'clock or something on Friday evenings. That would be something that simple shifts might do a better job of communicating the good stuff internally, because if I don't know about it, then I can't be talking to the external folks that I do have to do with, whether it be my neighbor who's quite interested in what's going on, or whether it be somebody that I'm working with in the course of my work at the university. Thank you.
Well, I see a few of our public relations people in the room. Take that to note, please, that the timing may be as important as the information. And I'm glad to hear you read it, because I have been wondering whether people actually read this stuff or not, because it's clear that we all know a lot about what's going on at the university. But I don't think a pop quiz in the general population, if it wasn't about the last football score, would get us a big return. But I'll turn to Chancellor Apple and say, this is, I think you mean Manoa Communications, right? Yeah, so it's all yours. Okay, other questions?
Sir.
Yeah, David Chin, Manoa faculty member, current department chair and former chair of the Manoa Faculty Senate. I read in the STAR Bulletin, so I don't know how accurate this is, but it says that the regents meet behind, 3 of them meet behind closed doors and evaluate President Greenwood, and does not solicit comments from the public, faculty, staff, or students. Now, it seems to me that since President Greenwood is fairly intelligent, that this sends her the message that she can ignore her relationships with the public, with the faculty, with students, and just concentrate on her relationships with the regents. Back when President McLean was doing this, he started a system of 360s for all executives, and I recommend that you go back to that if you've gone away from that.
Well, let me just respond to 2 things. Okay, go ahead, Eric. No, please, boss, go ahead.
No, we still maintain the 360 review. So the committee of 3 is actually, and this year is going to be 5, are actually set up to help facilitate the review. It gets the 360 that has been the practice, as well as a review of all the board members involved as well. The review for the cycle that we're going through, I think we're looking at a 5-year or 3-year cycle, a 4-year cycle where we would have a more extensive review. But in between, on the intervening years, it will be the standard 360 review. So we will be coming up on a more extensive review.
So I think the other thing you're referring to is what we have used as what I call our no surprises meeting, where and this was true with David McLean as well, a regular meeting to set the agenda for the next board meeting and to deal with issues. It's also the opportunity if there is a surprise, something that's building up, something that's happened, it's an opportunity to say, well, this is the case, it's happening. And it moved, when we had a second vice chair put in by the action of the board, it became 3. It had been 2 before that. Now, I'm going to defer to the board chair here, because I think we're looking into whether there's any issue with that or not. I think it is a permitted interaction group based on the fact that there are no decisions made there. It's only a question of reviewing the agenda and discussing what's necessary for items to be prepared to go to the board.
I'm happy to hear that you are doing what you have been doing. So,
yes.
Star Berlin is inaccurate as usual.
Yes.
I'm going to jump in here in my most important role as MC of this and say that we have time for one more question.
Do you have a question back here? It's been waiting.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Hi, my name is Joshua Murillo. I'm a graduate student in the physics department. And I had a question, but I also had a comment on something that I think it was the Chancellor had mentioned. And that's regarding the increase of tuition and the increase of financial aid. And I just wanted to point out that when you give money away for tuition, that money is gone. I never get money back from tuition. Versus getting money from financial aid, there are always strings attached. I never get free money. I always have to give it back at some point. I've never gotten a grant, by the way. Some people probably have, or, you know, whatever it is, they just give you money. That's never happened to me. So I think the idea of increasing financial aid, along with increasing tuition, it seems to, I guess, miss the idea that those two things are not equal. And I can get more financial aid, but sure, I have to pay that back. And there are fees, there's interest that goes along with financial aid. So I don't think increasing financial aid along with tuition makes much sense. Well, at least for an excuse to increase tuition. My question actually, though, is about the salaries for graduate assistants. And there's been a lot of work with the Graduate Student Association here at Manoa to try to bring the graduate assistant salaries into the decade we're in, because the salaries have been frozen for about a decade now of graduate assistants. And so relative to basically every other university in the country, we are very far behind. But as you all acknowledge, the students, especially the graduate students who are teaching classes, who are doing research, they are basically the backbone of what gets done as far as, well, at least in the sciences, from my experience. So I'd really like to be sure that that's taken into account and you guys appreciate how much work is being done there, and that we can bring our salaries up a little bit, because it was my understanding that I don't need to take out loans when I'm in graduate school as a science major, but I've had to do that because my salary doesn't cover enough of the cost of living in Hawaii. So is there progress to be made in order to bring the salaries up? I guess that's my question.
There is, and these are great points and great questions. First of all, I'm not sure you understood what I said earlier about what we turn back in financial aid. That's in terms of the undergraduate tuition that we give back, that we would collect and give back, not in loans, but in actual grants. But with graduate students, and I'm going to get in a whole lot of trouble here, because one of the things you always have to do in academia is you have to have these discussions with your deans and so on before you go forward. But I mentioned earlier we had a retreat this Saturday, and there are two things we started the retreat off with, that there are two, so I parachuted in, there's two things smack you in the face about Manoa. One is that our graduate programs are underfunded, and two is that our facilities need a lot of work. Oh, I'm sorry. And one is that our graduate programs are underfunded, and one is that our facilities need a lot of work. So we decided, the vice chancellors, to take a proposal to the deans at our next meeting, where we will establish a floor stipend for graduate students next year of $17,500, with the goal of going to $19,000 the year after that. So we priced it out, and we're looking at our budgets very carefully to find how we can reorganize what we prioritize in our budget to make that happen. It is very obvious. By the way, 19 is the floor in the UC system, just to give some basis. So we're going to, those students who receive aid, can you hear me? A floor for graduate student stipends will be $17,500. Right now, there are graduate students that make everywhere from $13,100 on up, and we have different steps. And the $17,500, it's actually $17,496 is step, read 9, 8, step 8. So we're going to essentially remove the bottom 7 steps starting in the fall. Now, my deans are hearing this for the first time. Unfortunately, I didn't plan on talking about this until I met with them. But I also feel that they will all agree, especially since we're agreeing to help them. It's not all on them. But 19 is the floor in UC system. And of course, many of our graduate programs are better than theirs. So we need to be that competitive. As a great university, a great research university needs a great graduate program. And it was very clear to me as soon as I got here that we need to strengthen that. We've gone through a lot of discussions about this. The other issue is how long and how many years you sustain that funding. And that's very important too. Our deans, I'm looking forward to this conversation with them, and we need to talk about right-sizing our graduate programs, making sure that our graduate programs are student-centric, because sometimes, and I'm not going to say anything about the University of Hawaii's graduate programs. I'll tell you about my previous life as a graduate dean. We often sized our graduate programs based upon our teaching needs, and that is no way to run a graduate program. We have to run a graduate program based upon the students we can support, we can mentor, and quite frankly, we can find positions for. And the better the input to the graduate program, the better you do in your recruiting and being able to get the best graduate students, the better output, the better places that you place them in PhD as PhDs into faculty positions at better universities. So we're doing a lot in that. We really put a stake in the ground this Saturday. We're gonna approach this one very aggressively.
So I want to thank all of you for being here this afternoon. Please feel free to send your thoughts to us. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be here this afternoon. I know my colleagues from the Board of Regents do as well. Eric, do you want to say anything in closing? Anybody else? Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you taking the time.